I think most times when thirsty drinkers walk into a tap room and see a friendly face ready to pour them some great craft beer, it's easy for many of us to forget that we're walking into an industrial manufacturing space rather than just a really cool bar. As an industrial space, breweries have all sorts of hazards that brewers and owners need to be concerned about, not only for the safety of their guests, but more importantly, the safety of their employees. With industrial-grade chemicals, confined spaces, and plenty of scalding hot water, breweries have to be smart about how they approach safety in their brewing spaces. Unfortunately, with the explosion of small, independent brewers, the overall safety record of the industry just isn't that great. And this bit of criticism is what I want to focus on in this video today. Hey, this is Ryan with Beer by the Numbers. And it's not a big secret that sometimes small businesses cut a few corners to save some money to remain profitable. I'm sure many mom and pop restaurants or shops you've been in have had some sort of small code violation here or there. But what happens when your small business involves vats of boiling hot water and industrial grade cleaning chemicals being used in confined spaces? And of course, this prompted a few other questions from this beer nerd's crazy brain. How is the craft beer industry's safety record? What are some of the most common violations? And what are brewers doing to step up safety on their sites? I'll try to answer all of this and more today on Beer by the Numbers. So the thing that prompted me to create this episode was a Reddit post talking about a news story about a worker who suffered significant injuries at Trillium Brewing Company earlier this year. The story apparently goes that an electrical contractor was working near the pilot water tank and a gasket or clamp was incorrectly secured, and the building pressure of that pilot tank caused the line to burst, spilling near boiling hot water onto the contractor. Witnesses said the event was pretty horrifying. They said the man was ripping off his clothes while running away from the overflowing vat, screaming for help. Some say they saw parts of his skin peeling off. He had to be airlifted in a medical helicopter to Boston for treatment, as 50 to 60% of his body had been burned. Fortunately, his injuries were non-life-threatening, but after hearing this story, it's clear that this incident could have been much, much worse. And these incidents aren't limited to just employees either. In 2014, a fermentation tank exploded during a brewery tour at Franconia Brewing in McKinney, Texas. 2 guests were injured when a rush of half-fermented beer spilled onto them. They sued the brewery for $1 million and ended up settling out of court. And looking back on the workplace death statistics, from 2009 to 2012, 4 people died in work-related incidents in craft breweries. Now, 4 people might not seem like a lot, but it's 4 more than really should be acceptable. According to an interesting article done by the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, there were nearly 4 times as many safety violations as craft breweries in recent years than at large breweries on a per-employee basis. And the beer industry experts say that the safety oversight at smaller companies is worse than the official statistics might suggest, because injuries, even severe ones, oftentimes go unreported. According to Reuters' analysis of the data, state inspectors and OSHA found 547 violations, including 250 serious violations, at craft breweries from 2003 to 2011. Officials fined small breweries an aggregate of $220,000 for violations ranging from failing to enclose sprockets and chains to not ensuring machinery was disabled when an employee was inside. So what are the most common violations breweries find themselves in trouble with safety officials for? Well, breweries have all sorts of things like grain silos, mash tuns, kettles, and other enclosed spaces that require careful consideration from brewers and owners. Workers are required to be trained as to how to safely enter and exit such spaces, and also what to do in case an accident happens. But oftentimes, such training and proper signage are not provided. Many breweries also rely on ammonia refrigeration to keep beer and other things around the brewery cold. What many don't realize is that ammonia is a pretty dangerous chemical covered under OSHA's regulation for minimizing the release of toxic chemicals. Often, the ammonia isn't stored properly, and no formal processes have been developed by brewers for safe handling of that ammonia. Same goes for lack of labeling on many other industrial cleaning agents. And probably the most common violations have to do with forklifts used to transport raw materials and finished kegs. Forklifts are pretty dangerous. They have a ton of moving parts, a bunch of hydraulic pressure, and are more than capable of lifting a ton of heavy things. Many brewery employees have little to no forklift training formally, and breweries are often not marked with safety markers related to forklifts. Warehouse traffic is also an important factor that often goes unnoticed by small brewers. Given all these citations, it's no surprise that OSHA has began stepping up enforcement of safety violations at breweries since 2016. OSHA has been requiring better reporting of injuries of brewery employees and asking breweries to better harmonize the warning labels on chemicals and ingredients in the brewing space. So what are brewers doing to address safety issues within their brewing spaces? First, industry groups like the Brewers Association are making safety a bigger focus at various events and conferences. There are more breakout sessions and conference speakers dedicated to safety than ever before, and they are being well attended by their brewer members. The industry associations also publish guides for their members to help avoid many of the common violations breweries are getting dinged on today. Insurance companies that work with brewers are also getting in on the action. I found a couple 100-page guide of safety recommendations for brewers being published by insurance companies. But best of all, many breweries, even some of the smallest, are starting to develop formal training programs for their employees and are even starting to think twice about what they ask their employees to do. Asking their employees to think about things like slinging around 165-pound kegs without stretching or using proper lifting techniques, or dropping equipment near their feet without steel-toed boots, or getting a slight burn by standing too close to vessels with heated water in them. Having everyone on the same page about safety is going to go a long way towards cutting down injuries at breweries in the future. Have you ever heard of anyone being injured at a brewery? Are you a home brewer who has ever had a little accident? Let me know your story down in the comments section below. Also, check the link in the description to the Beer by the Numbers Facebook group. Once again, this has been Ryan with Beer by the Numbers, and I'll be back next week with more safety-conscious beer content.